Yeah. Right. So, hello everyone. Hopefully, as others will join as we go along. So, this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, but now finally I have something to show and something to discuss this, but in a very important aspect of our realities that we currently suffer from. So it's a very remedial kind of take on. It's almost like a concocting a medicine for our times. So I'm going to talk about disruptive technology for disruptive pedagogy. This is something, again, I published around in my previous work. Then I'll talk about something that I call progressive authentication. Again, maybe not my original, and then hopefully that will resonate with you in some ways, and you'll find some of that part of your own experience and your students' experience. Then I'll talk about dialogue games, which, that's something I want to revisit and give it another coat of paint, if you like, of the modern time. And then finally, I want to talk about TEEL, because technology enhanced and enabled, right? That's some of the learning with in certain ways cannot be really done productively without technology, right? So some of the like dialogue games, you can imagine them on pieces of paper passing on and so on, but it's just not productive. It's not really feasible that way. A lot of things that when I worked with Diana Lorillard, she was very, and I by by association started being annoyed by learning technology. There's only very few things that we can call learning technology. VLEs were project management tools. They're not learning environments, right? They were not designed as such. So things like these dialogue games, I think that we'll talk in a bit more detail. That was a learning technology. Pedagogical pattern composer, that Diana and myself, we worked on that project, is a learning technology which we developed just bespoke for learning, not just for wider use. There's something called NetLogo. Maybe you heard of that years ago. That's a learning technology. It hasn't been appropriated from something else. So it's a very interesting AI enhanced and enabled dialogue games. So that's where I'm going to go with. The first part is going to be a little bit more, why am I doing all of this? This is the vision that I've been working under. So the problem, technology is so something can be used to reproduce current reality or to transform it or to move it forward. There's reproductive and transformative or disruptive kind of a way to be in the world. We need reproductive. That's part of how civilizations tick and live another day. But we also need disruptive in order, especially when we veer off the course that we are, I think many would agree, have taken now for the wars. So technology can be used for both equally effectively. But we see big tech using technology to double down on the oppressive potential of what Noam Chomsky and others call private tyrannies. Corporations and private businesses are private tyrannies, right? There's a small top, and Sheldon Walling called it inverted tyranny. The Western so-called democracies, the inverted tyrannies. So these tendencies have been empowered by technology. So that's the reproductive part and so boosting part of that kind of what we've been living last 40, 50 years. But to disrupt is another kind of potentially, and for that we need to be literate in disruption. Or creative, critical, and disruptive literacy to me are the same thing, right? I talk about creative literacy, domain literacy. I talk about critical literacy or a domain critical literacy. And I talk about disruptive literacy in a given domain. It can be physics, it can be social science, it can be biology, whatever. But that's the levels of the involvement in a particular or field. Now, um, the solution is to kind of try to develop this critical literacy, this very or disruptive literacy, or this. So functional literacy in my model, which I elaborated on in my previous publications, functional literacy serves reproduction. So teaching people at high HE level, we teach them how to operate the machinery of thought and practice already existing in the world. And that will just double down, that will just reinforce the current paradigms. But critical literacy enables transformation, is going beyond what we are given, what has been already set in place. So that's my kind of 2 pence of, and I've been struggling with these things about how to get both, because education is being completely kind of hijacked by this cognitive domain. When we talk about learning outcomes, we only and solely talk about how can you cognitively enhance your understanding of the world. Affective is completely outside. So again, in this way, going to the dialogue, going to the linguistic side of things, where the mind resides. Mind is sort of entangled, emotional and cognitive and all other things outside. So what Freire was warning us, that we should never, must never dichotomize cognitive and emotion. I teach now in a business kind of subjects, which I'm pushed to, but there's some of my colleagues talk about, when we want critical thinking to be objective, to be free from emotions. It's like not that's not. But sometimes I just have to go along and no, that's not what objective means. It's not really so. Now this is a little bit of mine again, trying to sort of render this complexity into some kind of handles that I can grab and go with. So I came across this something in well, Freire's work mostly, but also he never really kind of pushes this too much. But I thought it was a really interesting demythologizing. So any field of practice, and my favorite one is David Bowie's early work, are really bad. If you go and see what he's done in his early career, to understand how David Bowie became great, don't look at his final best work, but at the sort of beginnings, to understand that you could be David Bowie. There is my favorite one about Einstein's passionate going to cinema in the turn of the 20th century, which is the biggest invention. And if you understand that in cinema, for the first time, our humanity was made aware or stimulated to think about inconstancy of time, because time could be fast forward, reversed, and so on. And then it helped this young budding physicist, a clever guy no less, but it is to kind of get where Plato couldn't get to, right? So to understand that this environment had signals, and then in talking about that to your students, to yourself even, you understand that Einstein is not some kind of, mythologized kind of genius, that he just was lucky in so many ways. 50 years prior to that, he was, if he was born 50 years prior to his birthday, he wouldn't be probably at all interesting to us. It would be somebody else. So this is ontology of becoming, how nothing is set in stone, how, that is the sort of demythologizing, even the best sort of truths of science and our culture are just temporary kind of sort of resistant to refuting at the present moment. In the next, maybe, so that's the demythologizing curriculum. Teach those things. Teach it in a way. So teach and learn a critique, and teach and learn to critique. And then finally, I'm coming to this progressive authentication, which I've announced but never really followed up. So progressive authentication in this kind of my empowerment framework is open up, and as soon as and as much of the learning or coming to know, as Diana Laurillard used to say, learning is impoverished word in English language. Coming to know, how you come to know something, that's how you would know it. So open up as soon as much of the learning to as wide as possible scrutiny, starting from local, tutorial group, class group, to global, disciplinary specialist forums, topic discussion forums, etc. So, and that kind of goes beyond this kind of how we think of teaching and learning, or even relating to each other, is called it, Paulo Freire called persuasion, with sort of sense of teaching as a persuasion, as insidious propaganda. And it's we need this dialogue with educatees or students in a mode of reciprocity. So the more we think of equality between ourselves, because Freire and others, the pedagogy of the oppressed, the oppression is loaded in all these relationships between a teacher, student, government, citizen, manager, employee, and so on. So it's how we as teachers also, and again, given all this thing falling apart around us and education systems as well, for those of you who would want to know what I mean by that, I refer you to the book called Fall of the Faculty by Ginsberg. And it's how universities have been completely devoid of any educational kind of ethic inside of them. So we are to be there. And my kind of model in my head is when I face a student, they are expert. I'm talking to an expert, right? When I'm talking to a student, I might be an expert in the topic that I'm in, but I'm humbled by the expertise in students of where the student is at. It's like building a house, which is the expertise of some knowledge of construction. But the terrain is the student's expertise. They know if it's, porous, if it's a flood kind of flood floodplain and so on. What is their state of mind? They are the experts in it, and it's so easy then with some work to find yourself at the same level, and only then you have a dialogue. Otherwise, it's not a dialogue. And I won't go into more of these. Things like constructivism is no. That's not. If you practice social constructivism, we can practice it for bad purposes. We had Elon Musk talk the other day at the gathering on Saturday. It was a form of constructivist. They were discussing things that they believe in and they want to advance, and they were building off each other. But that's not progressive, in my opinion. That's not social justice. So we sometimes even confuse these words and then I think finally on the quote kind of count. Is the only means of education. There's no communication without dialogue, and without communication, there can be no true education. So all of these build to this reason why I am talking to you today. So this on the left is this dialogue game from the past, from 20 years ago. It speaks about humans, and I'll go into details about it a little bit to get you to understand that. Back in the day, I thought from that safe space where you can't get embarrassed, it's your colleagues and it's very safe with your, it's a live chat with sentence openers and so on, you progress. This is the progressive authentication idea. You go to something like chat back in the day when Twitter was a safer place. You had something called Twitter chat. So an expert or a book that you're discussing, what's his name, Duval, forget his first name. He was practicing design teaching in, I think, Holland somewhere. And it's called Open Door Classroom, where he would go on Twitter for everything with his students back in the day. Again, it was a different space. And authors of the books that people that in this class they would discuss would come in and, from the horse's mouth, they would get authentic kind of information. Then finally, for those of you older ones, you might remember Cloudworks. So how you progress from a safe environment to a bit of a kind of a, open free range chat, Twitter chat, to specialist kind of place like Cloudworks was. And grow your confidence, grow your voice, grow your criticality, creativity, disruptivity of thought. I think the next one is just to unpack a little bit of these dialogue games, and it's a lot of things, and I'm just not gonna go too much into detail. What is important here to notice, this is work from my colleagues back in the day, Simon McAllister and Andrew Ravenscroft. They developed this over many years, and they tested it, and it's really showing. I called it back in the day closed brain surgery. It actually, because language and mind are the same thing, and this is I'll give you Chomsky if you suspect that might be an issue. What you cannot say, you cannot think. What you cannot think, you cannot say. In a way, mind and language are really intimately related. The upshot of that is if you can intervene on the language, how people communicate and how they pay attention to these movements in the discourse as they play the game, the more they will, reorder their mind structures, and that's been, to my conviction, proven effect. Now, this was clunky Java web chat 20 years ago. You needed, kind of 3 specialists to just get it going. I practiced this at Kingston when I taught the PGC LTHE course. So with some of the students, with a great help from Simon himself to help me set up these rooms. And it was really kind of a clunky affair, but it's still, you have the chat, which is a topic, you have some resources to read, like usually texts and videos, and then you will go into the chat. Every move in the chat, you have to select what kind of move you want to make. Is it a challenge? Is it maintaining? Is it informing? And so on. And then pick up the sentence opener, which means that you cannot just say no. You have to, I disagree because, and then you have to qualify it, right? And in doing so, and I know I've been part of this testing, and at the time, it really gets you, hot under the collar. You want to get your point across. You want to really kind of get this, and it's really slowly kind of altering your ways. And now I'm not going to go. There's the learning manager, facilitator, and players, which is students, all human beings in this setup, and so on. Now, turn taking is also part of the, how to make sure that everybody's got enough time. And here we can see that this is like a little emoji here in the middle. I don't know if you can see my mouse here. In fact, I might even be able to zoom in, probably not. It's like to see that to see that some comment is being commented on by somebody else, to give them time, to kind of do away with this kind of quick and instant kind of I need to say something. So it kind of like it kind of hogs the conversation in places where people take time to say something, right? So now that would be some good result. This is the sort of breakdown of how Wilkie initiates using an assertion move, I think, a position that George agrees with using I agree because. However, Wilkie then challenges George using I disagree because. John points out using also. Introduction to the notion of practical elements stimulates George using I'm not sure. This then stimulates Emma to offer qualifying question in the form isn't it the case that. This in turn stimulates John. So it's really like a horse race when you just read the kind of what happened. This is another part of the this system is to export the dialogue in the final form and the what happened across themes, across turns, and so on, and then have it as an essay, kind of almost like a introduction, middle, and conclusion, kind of parts of your essay to then just inform your writing of. Because you're part of it, so you might as well be able to. And I think the hardest, the best advice I was ever given, and I give to others about writing, is to imagine a dialogue. If you are, I wrote a little bit of fiction, but mostly academic. But it's always good to just imagine somebody at the other side. So this dialogue, kind of turn-taking, kind of game, is an excellent starting point for writing kind of a skill. So these are the things that they publish in this paper, and the paper is part of my down there. You have it at the bottom. It's the 2010, and you can find. So this is how the rooms are configured and how the dialogue openers. The vocabularies of openers can be set to dialectic, confrontational. I disagree because, right, or dialogical, explorative. For the art, science, and ill-structured knowledge domains, you would maybe want that difference. So you can play with that. Talking about open educational resources, the more you can change or adapt, I would quote Tom Ball, Professor Tom Ball, I used to work with at London Met, the more you can adapt, the more reusable it is. We call them reusable learning objects back in the day before it became open education resources. So the more you can adapt, the more you are able to reuse it, more open it is, right? So even the language vocabulary is something you can. So this is now my take. I've got a good few minutes, I guess, before my original time, maybe a few minutes. So I call it a interlock, which is, again, this is all in, and I talk enhanced and enabled, because something like dialogue games, you cannot do it without technology. So it's enabled by technology, right? Not just enhanced, it's enabled. You could pass the bits of paper with open, that would not work. So as the old one had requirements I needed to do something with. So it has to be configurable on topic, preparation materials, role setting, and turn taking. So that's something in the old version, you have it on the right, how you would set up a room, how you would furnish it with resources and so on, and topics to move from. So this is my AI interlock on the left, where I'm now doing that in my own way. So for this, for those of you who care or know or want to know, there is a small reason why we should all care and know. I used Qwen 2.5 mostly because it's free, not mostly, really entirely because it's free. There are, otherwise, all other ones, need to have some kind of a, even though I have an account with like a civilian account, but developer accounts are a different thing. So if you need to test your metal, it can be a costly affair if you don't have a free large language model. I use that Docker desktop to simulate integrated development environment, and Streamlit, an open source Python framework for data scientists that deliver dynamic data apps with only a few lines of code. But it's actually quite concise, but again, it goes quickly. And again, I will be, there's no shame. I used to code in my own, back in the day, by hand, as they say. Now coding is a very different affair. You can do a lot more with that because these things are very good for simple problems, coding syntax, and they can just do, you can just press play and it does it for you. You just kind of customize it here, there, and everywhere. Now, this is now, I've got an example of, so I'm going to show you the action. So bear with me. This is, okay. So I can call this, so Noam, maybe I can say Noam Chomsky. So this is a persona. I'm giving it what kind of persona I want to participate in this dialogue game. A world renowned philosopher and linguist. I'm going to stick to one. I can do another player if I wanted to. And then I can go and then just drag. One of the things I'm a bit, I've tried to play with text, and it can do text. It should do PDF and others and Word, but it doesn't. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to use web resources rather than files. Yeah, the kind of so I'm going to try to get I've got some prepared here. So I've got a particular resource here from Chomsky. I have another one here. So this is early days, and it's so these are some Wikipedia entries, and I'm going to try this one, the final one. This is a bit of a untested, completely untested, this one. Hopefully this will work. So now I've got my three sources for my discussion on AI in education is can be progressive thing, right? So Noam and so Noam will talk about this, and then I'm gonna go read text and start conversation, right? Hopefully, so there I've got this indicator that is now doing something. So now we are going into the dialogue, hopefully sometime soon. So it's now reading the text. This is running on my local host, so it's running on my. So I've got Noam is saying, so we are starting on the topic 1, and AI in education can be progressive thing. In my opinion, I believe AI in education can enhance inquiry and critical thinking, as exemplified by Chomsky's analogy of students not merely repeating what they hear, but challenging and exploring new ideas. So I'm not entitled, so I can respond to Noam, or I can start a new thread. I'm going to choose to respond to Noam. So I'm going to say I'm responding to Noam, and I'm going to choose a category. I'm going to say a question. And I say now, because I've chosen a question move, I'm going to select, can you explain example, Chomsky analogy of students not merely repeating what they hear, but challenging. Can you explain how AI can help with that, right? And then I do that, and then I say send. So now I'm entering my own response. So can you explain how AI can help with that? That's me, player. Noam, let me explain. I believe AI can assist by providing personalized learning paths and instant feedback. So it's already kind of making some sense to me in a small way. Again, early days, just random language model, not a bespoke one or something that I have more faith in. Later on, I'll show you just how I set it up to be this clever. I think I might be on time. Is everybody okay with me continuing? Or I mean, I've got a few more slides, so I'll just probably just get back to my. You get the sense of where I am now, right? So that's the sort of the action. And what I've achieved so far, and in principle, is the interlock that up to 2 AI players plus or 1 moderator player configure personalities. I have ability to have text and URLs, but text only format because PDF and other things fail it a little. It doesn't read them, doesn't do the reading. Then I had the structured mandated sentence openers, turn taking, that's also in place. And I'm kind of getting the handle on that. Export of conversation, that's one thing I didn't show. I can show you that now. And it's a really useful thing. If I go to export as HTML, download conversation as HTML, it downloads it into my browser. And then I can have that conversation to kind of open up the threads, the what to turn taking and so on, and I can export it as text. So that's already been achieved as well in this kind of way. Now, for to be achieved in medium term, I've got some more formats, even video. It'd be nice to put a video resource in there for the AI to go and look at the transcript of the video, if not the pictures, and get the sense of what the video is about. Then I want to do some rigorous testing, of course, because 1 human and 2 AI players is more AI players and that sort of thing, and how to do that on the interface. And then I finally make it more humanize the AI to be a bit slower in response, or maybe even have the human kind of a little kind of rough around the edges, maybe in places. I'll tell you later why. I will mention Timothy Leary if the time allows. To be achieved medium term and in long term plan is really world domination. Really is to have 3+ human players. In InterLoc originally was 6 human players. Was the like a sweet spot. Less than that and more than that would be a little bit difficult. Large language models test different LLMs with this, and again, that's funding and so on. Finally, deploy online and on scale, and that's something to kind of really be hopefully, and then do more rigorous testing. And finally, that's a long-term plan. And so controversy alert, I don't know if you have a minute or two. That would be great for me to just, I was inspired by Timothy Leary about something. I'm a player of chess and I like playing chess online with humans, not with machines. But I sometimes wonder if it's a machine at the other end, cleverly designed to look like a human with emotional kind of, ups and downs, if they're losing or winning. So I was inspired by this, and I read this absolutely great. If you can find it, it's an essay in a Apple kind of interface design kind of collective in the 1990. Timothy Leary contributed his essay on the interpersonal computers in 1990. Social media and social networks did not even been conceived. He was talking about interpersonal kind of. So one of the things he talks about is in my paper, I talk about epistemic mirrors, these agent provocateurs. The AI can be an epistemic mirror and provocateur, like create this kind of field, interactive field. Like Timothy Leary talks about that Gestalt movement in psychology at the time, model human perceptions and relations in terms of a kind of a field. And I was aware that the implication of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, scientists can no longer consider observations to be strictly neutral. A physicist shoots atoms down a linear accelerator, an anthropologist enters a village, a psychotherapist sits down and listens to a patient. My user, ideally in the future, is the student who's trying to learn to think and converse and have a discourse kind of skill, to go into a room where it could be a couple of humans and a couple of AIs, and not to know who's a human, who's an AI, right? That could be something, that create that field which turns particle into a wave in physics, yeah? And that sort of idea, or to me that believe I'm playing chess with somebody human on the other side, it gets a lot of different juices flowing. And again, it might be called cheating, but it's for the purposes of, it's placebo of for the best possible purposes. So OERness of the design, open educational resource aspect of this is in adaptable, configurable. The more adaptable, this is Tom Boyle speaking through me, Professor Tom Boyle, more adaptable, more reusable, right? Open in a translation to the modern nomenclature. Discussion of topics, of course, that can be configurable. Human to AI ratio. One AI, the rest human. AI player personas can be changed. There can be, novices, there can be experts, and so on. Dialogical versus dialectical, that can be adapted and configured. Scale, you can kind of go up and down and inexpensively so once this is in place. And discourse export to text, that can be used by teachers to see how the students go about inquiring in the domain with a set of texts that are given. So they can learn from or if I want to set up the next game, I can learn from where the game didn't quite work because I've got that text export. And pedagogical gains, it's focusing on process. It is exports. Students look at the process of discussing, not the product, not like the current ones. We ask ChatGPT, it gives us something back. The product, we ship it to the assessor and get our grade. That's the current, very impoverished, very cynical, sadly, but very widespread way of thinking about it. So this is from the best literature on frustrating plagiarism, is to really focus on process, not on product. An exercise in prompt engineering, which is, for our day, that's the best paid jobs in Silicon Valley. Still to this day are prompt engineers, as well as development of critical, creative, disruptive literacy. I mean, that's not something even, I'm not even shy to say that. Now, that would be the end of this talk. And I thank you very much for your patience. And I wish I had visuals all along. Thank you.